Hi, I'm Jim Raffle. Welcome to this episode of the Jim and Shelby Show, the All Things Print Podcast. I'm joined as always by
Shelby Sapusik.
And here we go. Now, the first thing we should probably do is let people know that we set out to have the podcast be weekly, and we've made a decision that that just doesn't work, and we've missed enough episodes that we're going to focus on probably every other week, and we may not even stick to that schedule, but we are going to continue to do the podcasts when we have content that's appropriate, like definitely trade shows. You're going to always see an episode around that, or like topics like we're going to talk about today. So what do you think we should talk about today, Shelby?
Well, you told me we have to talk about say yes.
So one of the
And I had to say yes.
yeah, you did. You had to say yes. One of the principles we founded this business, Colorcasters, on is the concept of say yes. And we thought that maybe over the next several months, we're going to look at key concepts that have helped us in our business, because really those things, whether it's a consulting business, a adhesive printing business, a vehicle wrap business, whatever kind of printing business you're in, I think the same concepts apply across the board. And so for us, one of the big ones, one of the keys is say yes. And I've got a little story about how I picked that up, but I don't know, is there something you want to maybe jump in with before I tell that story?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I don't know, 7-8 years ago, I was sitting on a houseboat in Seattle with my friend, Michelle Diatillo. She owns a company called Soch, which is a digital engagement agency. And we were just hanging out and barbecuing. And there were, my wife was along, and one of her friends was along, and her kids were there. And we're just talking business. And she goes, yeah. She goes, one of the things that just works for me is I say yes. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I just find ways to say yes. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. And at the time, it fit with something that another person in business I have a lot of respect for had said. And I don't remember exactly who it was, but he said something like, run towards the hard stuff. In other words, if there's hard stuff that no one else wants to do, go do it, because that's the stuff that's going to pay the best, because no one else wants to do it. And so I started kind of thinking about those two things together. And that was one of the cores of the formation of Telecasters, is how do we say yes? And I think we said yes a lot in the early days, didn't we?
Yes, but I think, when you're talking about a business, you still have to take some calculated risks. You can't say yes to everything, and that just can't be your knee-jerk response all the time. And even though we did try to say yes all the time, we certainly did say no a few times as well. I mean, we're not going to work for free, for instance. And if someone came up to us and said, hey, we want you to come in and do these profiles, and guess what? Somewhere down the road, someone's going to want you to do a profile like this, and that's how it's going to help you out, but we can't pay you. We're not going to say yes to that.
That's a really interesting example, because I literally just dealt with a similar situation to that today. I sent out a quote and I got back, why is this so expensive? We have a quote from someone else for X, and it was literally half. Mm-hmm. And I essentially responded with, all we do is this. The other people, and I didn't know who it was, they sell you other things. They sell you ink, they sell you substrates, they sell you equipment. And so perhaps they're bundling in this service at a discounted rate, but this is our price. And so that's one where I want to say yes, but I'm not going to say yes at half our normal rate. I mean, that's not feasible. So I agree. There have to be conditions under which you say yes. But I think the key for me is to look for ways to go, past, one of the big ones for me where I used to say no was when someone would ask me to do something, maybe I hadn't done exactly that before. So we do color management consulting. That's a huge part of our business. And I might know half a dozen rips pretty well. And then someone will throw a new rip at me, new piece of rip software. And we've got one of those coming up in March. It's a piece of rip software we've never worked with. But that doesn't scare me anymore. It used to, because I'm like, oh, what if I can't figure it out? It's like I have yet to have a piece of rip software I can't figure out. I mean, does it take a little while to click around and know how to do it? Yeah, it does. But I now know, after saying yes a few times when I really didn't want to, that I can pretty much figure out any piece of rip software and how to operate the color management functions within that, right? And so for me, that's part of how you grow your business, is get outside of your comfort zone, do things that you maybe don't think you know how to do, but maybe you have 90% of the skills and you don't even realize it until you try and use them.
That makes sense. I do think there's a value in saying yes to everything that makes sense. And but I just I guess I just want to caution everybody when they say find ways to say yes. Or I've been to seminars where they're like, always say yes. Well, that's always and never don't work with me, as you well know. That just, and both personally and professionally, you can't say yes to everything. You have to take risks. But at the same time, if you never take a risk, you're also never going to grow. And I understand that as well. And if we hadn't have found ways to say yes, to learn new rips, what if we had only stuck with one rip, one printer, one substrate, one way of printing? Where would we be today? We wouldn't be anywhere near as successful or as in demand as we are right now. We started off with saying, hey, we can't do the podcast every week. Well, guess why we can't do the podcast every week? We're busy helping people. We wouldn't have that kind of success if we didn't say yes. So I agree with the value of it, but I just want to throw that caution out there. Don't sink yourself. Make sure you're throwing your money at the right things. Make sure you're going to get a return on investment. Make sure you're getting paid what you're worth.
So one of the reasons I took a little pause before as I was looking behind you at your heat press, and to me, it was a perfect example of having 90% of the skills you need to do something. It's like, I know you press a whole lot of socks on that press, right? So the exact time, temperature, everything to press a pair of socks. But every now and then we decide to make something new, like bottle openers, right? And so those are metal, and they've got, there's some things we can look up and some basic time and temperature we can figure out. But it takes you a little bit of practice to get the first one off that looks great. It might take 5 or 6 tries to get one that looks great, because you got to play around with the time and the temperature. We did the same thing when we started making the thermal mugs, right? And so it took a few tries to get that right. But we knew the basic skills, and we just had to fill some knowledge gaps. And I think a lot of consulting turns out to be that. If I only said yes to consulting where I knew exactly how to do it, honestly, that means a whole bunch of people could say yes. If it's something where I feel like I have the base skills to say yes, and that through actually working on site, I will be able to bridge any knowledge gaps I have and get the customer from where they are to where they want to be, then I'm going to say yes. I may not necessarily have the answer in my head, but I know I have enough skills to find the answer. And I think that's one of those things, that's the whole getting outside your comfort zone issue. Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And every decision you make has consequences. You have to live with it either way.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So Jim, do you find that with saying yes, do you find that you take more risks in your professional life than you do your personal life by saying yes?
Well, I don't know. I mean, no, I actually think that I'm starting to say yes in my, that may have been true at the beginning, but I believe I'm starting to say yes a lot more in my personal life than I used to as well. I had an opportunity come up just a few weeks ago to join my family on a vacation, a cruise that starts next week. And it's relatively short notice. And we had literally within 6 or 8 weeks just gotten off a cruise ship, and we already had one booked later in the year in April. But I looked at it and I said, you know what, this is my brothers and other family members and friends. And you know what, I can carve the time out. I can make it work. And, I talked it over with my wife, and we just said, yeah, let's do it. And I think that's the kind of thing that even a few years ago, one or both of us would have just said, no way, it's not going to happen. So I think actually that the saying yes through the growth of color casters has helped me say yes in other parts of my life. So.
Okay. Just wondered. I threw that at you as a curveball. Sorry.
Well, I'm throwing it back at you.
I think I used to it's easier sometimes to take calculated risk with your business because you are trying to grow. In personal life, at least where I'm concerned, I'm a lot more cautious. I'm not always looking for growth and change, I guess. You get into your norms and you get into your comfortable areas in your personal life, and whatever the situation may be, you may not want to say yes just because it's something new, something different, something outside your comfort zone, and you don't need to do it necessarily. With business, saying yes becomes part of your growth strategy. And if you constantly are just trying to stay at the norm, how are you ever going to grow unless you're the only person in the whole wide world doing what you do?
Well, cool. I don't know if I have a whole lot to add. I mean, I think some of these business topics, there's, some of them, there's a lot you can go into depth, and others there aren't. Although I just did think of one more thing. Another thing that I found happening the more often we said yes. I jotted some notes down, so I'm kind of looking over here. I already kind of hit on the fact that we might learn new skills, right? Or bridge knowledge gaps, which is another way of saying we learn some new skills. And I think the other thing is we gain a new client, right? Even if it's a small project. I mean, that was, thinking back early on, oftentimes when I said yes, it was to small projects, 1 and 2 day projects, which are, we pretty rarely take on 1 day projects anymore, unless it's an existing client that's close by or we're in their area. But, early on, we'd find ways to take on the 1 day projects because that could roll into being a client who needed you for more work, right? So by saying yes, you gain a client. And when you're new, every client potentially has a lot of value, right? And then my favorite is every time I'm on site, including today, I generate pictures, and those pictures end up in social media. And so that's how we market. That's one of the main tools we use to grow Colorcasters was social media marketing. So every client was another opportunity to market that we're out there doing what we do. And Shelby, I think you're going to be at the Graphics Pro Expo in Irving, Texas on the 9th and 10th of March, right?
Right, for the Graphics Pro Expo show.
Yeah, you'll be walking that show, right?
Right, and probably hanging out at the PDS booth a little bit.
Excellent. Excellent. And then the other big one we've got coming up in April, I don't know the exact dates, except I know we're speaking on April 13th, is the ISA Sign Expo in Las Vegas. We will be there. And
I believe I believe it shows the 12th to the 14th in that one, April 12th to 14th in Vegas.
Yep. And we will be there. And again, it's far out, but I know people might be planning. And if you want to get together with us, now's a great time to reach out and let us know. And we will keep you posted on other places that we're going to be that are open and public like that. Oh, one more. If you're interested in color management training, the color management professional program, the fundamentals that we teach online live, is going to be happening on Thursday, March 16th. And we're doing it in a slightly different format than we've done the 2 days before. We're going to put it all into 1 day. So all you have to do is set aside that 1 day, and we will get you through the workshop, and that should prepare you for the online test so you can become a certified color management professional at the fundamentals level. So we got a lot going on. Check out the website, find us on social media, and email either one of us, Jim at Colorcasters or Shelby at Colorcasters, anytime you have questions. So I guess we'll see you next episode.